Hello and most welcome to H 1916 of the series. We made a short one before, 1915, the first one with Feyerabend, and this will be another short one. It is Feyerabend's Wittgenstein's philosophical investigations. Last time we went into the very helpful, I think this needs to be saved, put on paper, maybe Kalle could be so nice to do that. The 5 properties of T, philosophy. 5 properties, and we look at them carefully. It's a sort of summation how these are described in philosophical investigations. Very good starting thing. It should be actually on the preface to philosophical investigations or title or remarks on the philosophy of psychology.
5 properties of essentialism. Essentialism.
Yes, essentialism is T. That is T with a big T in this text, philosophy. And we will continue now on the second paragraph, or what number it might be, on page 451. And in criticizing T, Wittgenstein analyzes T4. So the different properties here, sorry to halt the reading, gets a different T number. And in this way shows the impossibility of the program T3, as well as the insolubility of the problems connected with this program. That implies that within T, we shall never be able to know what a certain word W means, or whether it has any meaning at all. Although we are constantly using that word, and although the question how it is to be used does not arise when we are not engaged in philosophical investigations. But did not this paradox arise because we assume that meanings are objects of a certain kind, and that a word is meaningful if and only if it stands for one of those objects? That is because we assume T1 and T2 to be true. If, on the other hand, we want to abandon T1, T2, we meet another difficulty. Words have then no fixed meaning. But what becomes of logic now? Its rigor seems to be given way here. But in that case, does not logic altogether disappear? For how can it lose its rigor? Of course not by our bargaining any of its rigor out of it. The preconceived idea of crystalline purity can only be removed by turning our whole examination round. That is, by changing from T to T Wittgenstein or T up. It will turn out that this change cannot be described simply as the change from one theory to another, although we shall first introduce T1 as a new theory of meaning. Before doing so, we have to present Wittgenstein's criticism of T. This criticism is spread throughout the book. It consists of careful analysis of many special cases, the connection between which is not easily apprehended. I have tried to use one example instead of many. And to present as many arguments as possible by looking at this example. From as many sides as possible. All the arguments are Wittgenstein's. Some of the applications to the example in question are mine. Mine are mine. The philosopher is a man who wants to discover the meanings of the expressions of a language or the essences of the things designated by those expressions. Let us see how he proceeds. Let us take, for instance, the word reading. Reading is here the activity of rendering out loud what is written or printed. And also of writing from dictation, writing out something printed, playing from a score, and so on. A. According to T1, we have to assume that the word reading stands for a single object. Now, there is a variety of manifestations of reading. Reading the morning paper, reading in order to discover misprints. Here, one reads slowly, as a beginner would read. Reading a paper in a foreign language that one cannot understand but has learned to pronounce. Reading a paper in order to judge the style of the author. Reading shorthand. Reading Principia Mathematica. Reading Hebrew sentences from right to left. We could wait there, just reading in the. Reading a score in order to study a part one has to sing. Reading a score in order to find out something about the inventiveness of the composer, or to find out how far the composer may have been influenced by other contemporary musicians. Ra-ba-ba. reading a score in order to find out whether the understanding of the score is connected with acoustic images or with optical images, which might be a very interesting psychological problem. Problem. But this variety, without any one feature that occurs in all cases of reading, is only a superficial aspect. All these manifestations have something in common, and it is this common property that is the essence of reading. The other properties, varying from one manifestation to the other, are accidental. In order to discover the essence, we have to strip off particular coverings, which makes various manifestations different cases of reading. But in doing so, the reader ought to try for himself. We find not that what is essential to reading is hidden beneath the surface of the single case, but that this alleged surface is one case out of a family of cases of reading. Consider, for example, the proceedings which we call games. I mean, board games, card games, ball games, Olympic games, and so on, and so on. So on. What is common to them all? What is? Do not say there must be something common, or they would not be called games. But look and see whether there is anything common to all. For if you look at them, you will not see something that is common to all. but similarities, relationships, and a whole series of them at that. And the result of this examination we see a complicated network of similarities overlapping and crisscrossing to characterize these similarities I can think of no better expression to characterize these similarities than family resemblances. Sister, brother, and nephew, for the various resemblances between members of a family, build, features, colors of eyes, gait, temperament, etc., etc., overlap and crisscross in the same way. And I shall say games form a family. Do we possibly make it a little smaller? 220, maybe 230? Yeah, it's perfect. And in the same way, we also use the word reading for a family of cases. And in different circumstances, we apply different criteria for a person's reading. B, looking at the outer manifestations of reading, we could not discover the structure suggested by T1. Instead of an accidental variety centering in a well-defined core, we found a complicated network of similarities. Does that fact refute T1? Surely not. For a philosopher who wants to defend T1, there are many possible ways of doing so. He may admit that the overt behavior of the person reading does not disclose any well-defined center, but he may add that reading is a physiological process of a certain kind. consider the case of a person who does not look at any printed paper, who's walking up and down, looking out the window and behaving as if he were expecting somebody to come. But the RP is going on within his brain. Should we take the presence of the reading process as a sufficient criterion for the person's reading, adding perhaps that we had discovered a hitherto unknown case of reading? So we put a stop there at reading. The last word being unknown case of reading. Page 453. So reading, the last word here. Reading.
Reading. Reading.
Reading. Reading. Grab some water in a second here.
Hej Jonas.
Ja, så ser jag.
Ja. Var du på torsdagen eller? Har du det?
So let's go to the summary. So what Feyerabend is doing here is looking at different aspects of T, essentialism or philosophy, and looking at them more carefully, more to the point, little by little. On page 451. We see one typical trait here. Towards the bottom is the penultimate paragraph. You are perfect. The no, if you go back where you were perfectly situated, Kalle. Go up a bit. There. The preconceived idea, you are correct, of crystalline purity can only be removed by turning our whole examination round. That is by changing from T to T Wittgenstein. So it's the idea of a purity that sort of dwells at the very bottom. I think it's a desire as well. So you desire this outmost clearness. And these, I would say, is one of the lures of essentialism/philosophy. We feel a need for it. We go to the next page. We will attack reading, as I understand it. Page 452. In the third paragraph, we have all the different types of reading. And there is a hell of a lot here, to say the least. We have shorthand, reading, Principia Mathematica, which obviously is ironically a punch toward Bertrand Russell, his friend and mentor at the beginning. Reading a score in order to find something about the inventiveness of the composer. Or shorthand, reading shorthand, if you can do that, I can. It's Swedish shorthand. So it took some time to learn. And if we go down, we will see all these manifestations themselves, all these manifestations have something in common. And it is this common property which makes them manifestations of reading. It is also this property that is the essence of reading. The other properties, varying from one manifestation to the other, are accidental. So they all have something in common. And all the other things are arbitrary. They're just added. They are some sort of supplements. Not actually needed, but they have something to the bottom of them. And this bottom act is the essence. How does Feyerabend Wittgenstein treat this? Well, he look at it as family resemblance. And here is a famous example when he introduces family resemblances and using games. It's epic. We have board games, we have card games, Olympic games, we have chess, we have playing in the field. And we cannot help ourselves thinking they must have something in common. There need to be a common denominator. But as goes with families, there are no common denominator. There's some things like gait, eye color, ways of expressing oneself. But in the end, if you go to second cousin or third cousin, you lose the similarities. You lose the essence. There are no essence. There are resemblances in between, but not all over the whole group. And the same goes for reading. Reading is not an essential thing. It's not a physiological process. Neither is it a mental process or a psychological process. That is reading. And that covers reading Hebrew, reading scores, reading mathematics, or reading misprints at work when you are doing your chores at the magazine. Kalle Lundahl, please enter the scene. You're welcome.
So we have to be careful here, I think, what we mean with essence in this case. This is the essence version 2. Reading, I think we have to think is an activity. It is a participle.
Yes, indeed, yes.
I don't know why doesn't all these cases of reading have something in common, namely reading
Yeah, yeah.
is the activity, and all these games here, they have also an activity in common, that is gaming. It's nothing passive property somewhere, perhaps. It could be, of course, but it's an activity, I would say.
Yeah, reading is an activity. It's a bit like all the members of a family, like for instance, the family of Anderson or something like that. But I can give an example. If you stretch this very far, you take playing like the game thing, playing in the ground like a child, and you compare that to, well, let's say chess playing or something like that. They're all called games. So in the activity, they share family resemblance. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And we know what we mean with reading. Usually, in everyday activity is not a problem. Understand what reading is.
Yes.
I don't know if that is also Feyerabend's point.
Yeah.
I think so. So I don't know what he means with physiological process. I don't know. I think it's about a game.
Yeah. His suggestion is the suggestion from the interlocutor that it should be a physiological process. Would you put your eyes on a printed text and there is a reading process within your brain? So that he doesn't like, but they're all similar activities. I think that you, me, and Feyerabend do agree.
So physiological would be the problem with physiological explanations that is only an inward explanation, so to say.
Yeah, it's a sort of essentialism.
It involves everything. It involves everything that is also the context. And family ones, we have to understand context, like in household, for instance, a family, or a game, we have a field.
Yeah.
And we know when you leave the field or you leave the chessboard, you enter something else.
Oh, yeah, indeed, yeah. It's a bit humoresque as well. Remember humor here, because essentialism has this seriousness, and it's the idea of an essence that you can't explain. It's hidden somewhere. It's the private language argument in some ways, actually.
Yes, let's say an essentialist would probably explain the family resemblance metaphor as follows. He would or she would go to the original, that is the ancestor of the family.
The original,
man from Africa.
Yeah, very good. You got it.
And then try to find the solution there.
Yeah. It's exactly that. Very good. We've seen the same thing within Darwinism and Richard Dawkins.
Of course, that is not necessarily wrong going to the sources, so to say.
No.
But then we have to remember it's not about the man or the woman, but it's the both interacting.
Yeah.
Because the original first man's eyes are different than those of the moments and so forth. But we know also that they are related.
Yeah.
They form the same game.
There are relations, there are things that almost look like essences, but there is nothing overall, the whole family, that is essentially the same. Which is a slight difference. It's such subtle remark. It's not like there is an absolute complete difference between essentialism and family resemblance. It's very subtle, the whole thing.
And we could also perhaps place the family metaphor also within the image of game itself, because family is a game in a one way, because it's you go to the courthouse when you want to marry, so it's a for sort of game, sociological game.
Yes,
if you get my
indeed.
point. So everything
I do get
what
your point.
So everything what Wittgenstein says is actually
Hallå där.
idea of game, but sociological game or so forth.
Yeah, most definitely. I think I'm afraid we have to end here.
Yes, absolutely.
It's starting up, but good comment. Yeah, the origin of the species, that should be one and should be the essence. That's a very clear pointer to what the difference is, which is very subtle. Okay, I say thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl, for your excellent comments. And thank you everyone for listening in. Have a very pleasant morning, day, or afternoon. Bye-bye for now.